I saw it 3 days before it happened. That's the thing about precognition nobody tells you. It doesn't come with a pause button. No rewind, no subtitle that says, hey, your boyfriend of 2 years is about to destroy you on your birthday. It just flashes. A fragment. A feeling wrapped in images that burn behind your eyes and disappear before you can grab them. I saw Jiwon's face. Cold. Decided. Gone. And I still set the table for two. My name is Seo Haon. I'm 23 years old, an Omega with a gift I never asked for, and an ex-boyfriend I'm trying very hard not to cry about in public. I live in Busan in a third-floor apartment that smells like instant ramyun and bad decisions. I work part-time at a bookshop near Gwangali Beach. I talk back to alphas who think their designation gives them a personality, and I can see pieces of the future like a broken television switching channels without warning. It's as exhausting as it sounds. Today was supposed to be my birthday. Instead, I was sitting on the cold edge of my bed at 7 in the morning, staring at a text message that read, I think we've grown apart. I'm sorry, Haon. I hope you understand. Grown apart. 2 years. Matching scarves. His scent memorized into the back of my throat like a second language. And all I got was 9 words and a period that hit like a closed fist. I put my phone face down on the mattress. Then I picked it up again. Then I put it down. I did this 4 more times before I accepted that the words weren't going to change no matter how many times I looked at them. I saw this coming. Something inside me whispered, then why does it still feel like this? Yak another part answered, good question, no answer. Moving on, I had exactly 2 plans for my birthday now. Plan A was getting out of this apartment before the walls started talking. Plan B was consuming an irresponsible amount of tteokbokki and pretending I was fine until I actually became fine. I was already dressed for Plan B when my phone rang. Not Jiwon, of course not Jiwon. It was Seo Haon, my best friend, fellow Omega, the only person on earth with worse timing and better intentions. Happy birthday, he screamed into the phone before I could speak. Don't say anything sad. I can already hear the sad in your breathing. Stop breathing like that. Good morning to you, too. Jiwon texted you, didn't he? It wasn't a question. Shidon had the emotional radar of someone who had watched me fall apart twice before and had pre-packed snacks for the occasion. It's fine, Maiden, I said, which was a lie so obvious even I was embarrassed by it. Right. Okay, new plan. I heard shuffling, a door closing, and what sounded like someone knocking something off a table. The Quan brothers called me last night. I paused. Which Quan brothers? Haon. Daon. The Quan brothers. My stomach did something complicated. Every Omega in Busan knew the name Quan. 3 brothers. Triplets. 28 years old. All alpha. All insufferably successful in ways that defied reasonable explanation. Quan Sejin, the eldest by 4 minutes, ran the family's real estate empire with the calm precision of someone who had never once panicked in his life. Quan Se-yun, the middle, was a former national swim champion turned sports medicine specialist who smiled like he knew exactly what you were thinking. And Quan Swan, the youngest, the quietest, the one whose eyes did something to the air around him, designed architectural spaces that made people stop walking and just stand there, feeling things they couldn't name. They were also, as far as I was concerned, completely out of my atmosphere. Why, I said carefully, are the Quan brothers calling you? Because Sejin went to university with my older brother, and they apparently kept in touch, and because, Don took a breath, because they want to take you out for your birthday. Silence. Come again. They heard about G1. Don't ask me how. Alphas have networks, you know how they are. Sejin called last night and said, and I quote, one, tell Haon we want to help him have a good birthday. I laughed. It came out shorter than I intended. That's either the sweetest thing I've ever heard or the beginning of a true crime documentary. Haon, I'm serious, Dawn. 3 alpha brothers, 1 heartbroken Omega, on his birthday. I stood up, walking to my window. Below, Busan hummed quietly in the early morning, the sea glittering between rooftops. That's a setup. That's literally the setup. Or, Dawn said, it's just 3 guys who want to help. I pressed my forehead against the cold glass. And that's when it happened. A flash, quick and sharp, like lightning behind my eyes. Three shadows, warm and enormous, standing between me and something dark I couldn't quite see. Then it was gone. I pulled back from the window. My breath had fogged the glass. Three alphas. See, I thought, what could possibly go wrong? Famous last words, Haon. Truly historic. I stayed at that window longer than I should have, watching the morning settle over Busan like it had no idea my life had just been reorganized without my permission. The sea looked unbothered. The rooftops looked unbothered. Even the stray cat on the corner looked unbothered, and that cat had three legs and an attitude problem. Must be nice. Hi on. Daon's voice crackled through the phone. You went quiet. That's either deep thinking or a spiral. Which one is it? Somewhere in the middle, I admitted. Walk me through this again. Sejin Quan called you, personally, to arrange a birthday outing. For me. Correct. A man I have spoken to exactly twice in my life. Twice more than most people get. I turned from the window and sat back on the bed. My half-eaten bowl of instant ramyun had gone cold on the desk. The birthday candle Daon had mailed me last week was still in its plastic wrap on the shelf. Everything about this morning felt like a rough draft. Did he say why? I asked. Like specifically why? Daon paused just long enough to make me suspicious. He said you deserved a good birthday. Down. He said Jawan was an idiot. Better, keep going. And he said, another pause, shorter this time, that his brothers have been asking about you for a while now. I opened my mouth, closed it, opened it again. Asking about me how? The normal way people ask about someone they're interested in, Haon. With questions about you, your life, whether you're seeing anyone. Don's voice carried the energy of someone delivering news they had been sitting on since midnight. Who? Seo asked if you still work at the bookshop near Gwangali. Sewon asked if you still do those sunrise walks along the beach. I sat very still. Here is the thing about being a precognitive omega in a world full of alphas. You learn very quickly that attention from an alpha is not automatically a gift. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it is the exact opposite, wrapped in expensive cologne and good bone structure. But that flash at the window sat in the back of my mind. Three shadows. Warm, protective, standing between me and something I couldn't see yet. My gift never lied. It just never gave me enough. I need coffee before I process any of this, I said finally. They're picking you up at noon. I stood up so fast my knee hit the desk. The cold ramyun bowl wobbled dangerously. Excuse me, they are what? Noon, Haon. It's already 9:40. Dion, you could have opened with that. I was building to it. You were stalling and you know it. I grabbed my jacket off the chair, already moving toward the bathroom. Where are they taking me? What do I wear? Why do I suddenly have 2 hours to exist as a presentable human being when I have been ugly crying energy since 7 a.m.? You haven't actually cried yet. Emotionally, I have. It counts. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror and winced. I looked exactly like someone who had received a 9-word breakup text on his birthday. I look tragic. You look fine. Wear the dark green sweater. It does something good for your eyes. I hate that you know that. You love that I know that. Go get ready. And Han? His voice softened just slightly. Jawan didn't deserve you. He never did. Let these men buy you dinner and remind you what it feels like to be treated right. I held the phone against my shoulder and stared at my own reflection for a moment. 23. Heartbroken. Gifted with a power that showed me fragments of futures I couldn't control. And apparently 3 alphas wanted to take me out for my birthday. You're lucky I'm curious by nature, I told Daon. He laughed. I'm lucky you're nosy, you mean? Same thing. Goodbye. I hung up and turned the shower on. While the water warmed, I leaned against the tile wall and let myself have exactly 45 seconds of feeling everything. The ache of G1's message. The embarrassment of hoping this morning would go differently. The strange, flickering warmth of that vision I couldn't explain. 3 shadows, standing close, with a feeling of something enormous shifting. 45 seconds. Then I straightened up, stepped under the water, and decided that whatever today was going to be, I was going to meet it with my chin up. I was a precognitive omega from Busan, with excellent taste and very little patience for nonsense. The Quan brothers had no idea what they were walking into, and honestly, neither did I. My doorbell rang at exactly noon. Not 1 minute early, not 1 minute late. I smoothed the front of my dark green sweater, took one breath, and opened the door. Three pairs of eyes looked back at me, and the air in my hallway changed so completely it felt like a different room. Not metaphorically, literally. The temperature shifted. The scent hit first, because of course it did. And because the universe has a specific sense of humor when it comes to omegas and alphas standing too close together in small spaces. Cedar and sandalwood and something darker underneath, warm and layered, like wood smoke on a winter night. My nose processed it before my brain caught up, and I spent exactly 2 seconds standing there looking like I had forgotten how doors worked. Then I pulled myself together. Mostly, Quan stood at the front, eldest by 4 minutes, and every single one of those minutes showed. He was tall in the way that made hallways feel smaller, broad-shouldered in a charcoal coat that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and he was looking at me with an expression that was calm and focused, and somehow made me feel like the only object in a very large room. His hair was dark, cut clean, and in his eyes were the deep brown of someone who made decisions and never second-guessed them. Seo Haon, he said, not a question, just my name, like he had been saying it for years. That's me, I said. Tragically, his mouth moved. It was barely a smile, but it counted. Behind him stood Quan, who had the audacity to look like that while holding a small bakery box with a ribbon on it. He was slightly leaner than Sejin, with the kind of easy posture that came from years of swimming, and he was grinning in a way that suggested he found life genuinely funny. His eyes were lighter, warmer, crinkled at the corners like smiling was his default setting, and frowning required too much effort. "Happy birthday," Sehun said, holding out the box. "Chestnut cream cake. Down told us it's your favorite." I took the box carefully. "Honor, Down told you a lot of things, apparently." "He's very enthusiastic," Sehun agreed. And then there was Quan Sewan, youngest, quietest, standing slightly to the side like he had calculated exactly where the light would fall and chosen his position accordingly. He was the same height as his brothers, but held himself differently, like he was always listening to something just below the frequency of normal conversation. His eyes met mine and stayed there, dark and steady, and he didn't say anything at all. He just nodded once. I decided immediately that he was the dangerous one. "So," I said, looking at all three of them, because individually was too much, "you drove to my apartment to take me out for my birthday. On a Saturday, all three of you." "Correct," Sejin said. "Yes, sir, and this is normal to you." "We thought you deserved a good day," Sehun said simply. I looked down at the cake box in my hands. Chestnut cream. My actual favorite, not the polite kind of favorite I told people when I didn't want to explain myself. The real one. The one I only bought for myself twice a year because the good bakeries charge too much. Something small and fragile moved in my chest, and I immediately put a wall around it. "Come in," I said, stepping back. "I need my bag, and then I need someone to explain the plan because I function poorly without an itinerary." Sejin stepped inside first, then Sehun, then Sewon, who paused in the doorway and looked at my apartment the way people look at places that tell them things. His gaze moved across the bookshelves, the sunrise sketches taped above my desk, and the small succulent on the windowsill that had survived 3 winters through what I could only describe as personal stubbornness. "You drew those," he said quietly. It was the first thing he had said directly to me. I glanced at the sketches. Early morning habit. The light off the water does something weird and I have to put it somewhere. He looked at me then. That same steady look. "They're good. They're functional," I said, which was my standard deflection for anything I actually cared about. He almost smiled. I noticed because it was the kind of almost that took effort to catch. I grabbed my bag from the chair and turned back to find Sejin standing near my bookshelf, reading the spines with his hands tucked behind his back. Alan Seyun already investigating my kitchen with the curiosity of someone who cooks seriously and judge pantries silently. "I didn't invite you to browse," I said. "You didn't stop us," Seyun called from the kitchen. "I'm stopping you now." "Noted." He came back out, completely unbothered, still smiling. Ready? I looked at the three of them, standing in my small apartment, enormous and warm, and smelling like everything my instincts were not supposed to notice. My precognition flickered. Just a pulse. A half-second image of laughter around a table. Low light, someone's hand close to mine. I blinked it away. Ready, I said. And I walked out the door with three alpha brothers at my back, my chestnut cake in my arms, and absolutely no idea how deeply this birthday was about to rearrange me. If you are loving Haon's energy and you need to know what happens next, hit that subscribe button right now. This story is just getting started, and trust me, you do not want to miss what these three brothers are about to do to his perfectly organized little life. Now back to the story. Their car was parked directly in front of my building. Black, clean, the kind of quiet expensive that didn't need a logo to announce itself. Sejin opened the back door without making it feel like a gesture. It just happened, natural and unbothered, like breathing. I stood there for half a second. I can open my own doors, I said. I know, Sejin said, calm, patient, still holding it open. I got in, because I was cold and the cake was getting heavy and picking battles before noon on my birthday felt excessive. Seo slid in beside me, leaving one seat between us. Quan took the other side. Sejin drove. I sat in the middle of three alphas and stared straight ahead and gave myself a very firm internal speech about staying rational. The speech lasted about 40 seconds before Seo spoke. We're going to Guangali first, he said. Walk along the waterfront, then lunch, then wherever you want after that. Wherever I want, I repeated. It's your birthday. It is, I agreed. It just hasn't felt like it until roughly 4 minutes ago. Seo looked at me sideways. There was something careful in it, like he was measuring how much to say. Jiwon was stupid, he said finally. For the record. I blinked. You don't know Jiwon. I know he texted a breakup on your birthday and then presumably went back to sleep. He shrugged one shoulder. That's enough. I had absolutely no response to that. I faced forward again and watched Busan slide past the windows. The Saturday morning streets busy and salt-haired and indifferent to my personal catastrophe. Sewon said nothing from my left, but he had shifted slightly in his seat and his arm was close to mine. Close enough that I could feel the warmth without actual contact. It was either coincidence or the most patient thing I had ever experienced from an alpha. I genuinely could not decide which answer alarmed me more. Guangali Beach in late morning was exactly what I needed without knowing I needed it. The bridge stretched silver across the water. The sea was that particular shade of gray-green it turned in cooler weather, and the wind came off the waves sharp and clean and smelling like salt and distance. I walked with my hands in my pockets and my cake safely tucked back in its box in the car, and I let the sound of the water do what it always did, which was make every problem feel slightly more manageable. Sejin walked on my right, Seo on my left, Sewon just slightly behind, like he was keeping watch on something none of us could see yet. You come here in the mornings, Sewon said. Not loud, just present. I glanced back at him. Dawn told you that too. You mentioned it once, at the university library fundraiser 2 years ago. He held my gaze easily. You said the light at sunrise off the Gwangangan Bridge was the only thing that made early mornings worth surviving. I stopped walking. He stopped too. I said that 2 years ago, I said slowly. At a fundraiser I barely remember attending. You were wearing a yellow scarf, he said. You were arguing with the event organizer about the book donation system. You won. Something very strange happened in my chest. Not the precognition. Something older and quieter than that. You have an unsettling memory, I told him. Only for things worth remembering, he said, and then walked past me to catch up with his brothers like he hadn't just rearranged something fundamental in my ribcage. I stood on the Guangali waterfront for 3 full seconds before following. Lunch was a small galbi place tucked one street back from the water. Sakukanash, the kind with low tables and charcoal grills built into the center in banchan that kept arriving in small ceramic dishes without being asked. The kind of place you only found if you already knew it existed. Sejin ordered without looking at the menu, then looked at me. Anything you don't eat? Tripe, I said, and people who don't use turn signals. Seo laughed. It was a full sound, unguarded, and it changed his whole face. Sejin almost smiled again. I was starting to understand that almost was his version of a full reaction. We ate. The meat sizzled on the grill between us, and the charcoal smoke rose in soft curls, and the conversation moved in the way good conversation does, without force, without performance. Seyun was effortlessly funny. Sejin asked questions that were precise and genuine. Sawan listened to everything and spoke only when he had something real to add, which meant every word he said landed differently than everyone else's. I was having a good time, on my birthday, after a 9-word breakup text. With 3 alpha brothers I barely knew, which meant my precognition chose exactly that moment to flare white-hot behind my eyes. Not a flicker this time, a full image, sharp and breathless and gone before I could hold it. 2 of the brothers, standing across from each other, voices raised, eyes hard, fighting, over me. I set my chopsticks down very carefully and reached for my water glass. "You okay?" Sehun asked. "Fine," I said. "Absolutely fine." I was not fine. But I had spent 23 years being not fine in ways that nobody could see, so I picked my chopsticks back up. She reached for a piece of galbi and chewed it like a person who had not just watched 2 brothers fight over him in a vision that felt more like a warning than a dream. The meat was good, excellent actually, which was deeply inconvenient because I wanted to be too distracted to enjoy it. Seyun was watching me, not aggressively, not the way some alphas watched omegas like they were monitoring inventory. It was softer than that, curious, like I was a book he had opened to a random page and found himself genuinely invested in. "Where did you go just now?" he asked quietly. "Nowhere," I said. "You went somewhere." I have a very active internal life. It's a gift, literally. I smiled at him, sharp and bright, the kind of smile that answered nothing. "The galbi is incredible, by the way. I know whoever found this place deserves an award." "Sewon found it," Sejin said from across the table. I looked at Sewon. He was turning a small piece of meat on the grill with careful attention, like the conversation had nothing to do with him. "Of course he did," I said. Sewon looked up then. Our eyes held for exactly 1 second longer than comfortable. And then he looked back at the grill and I looked back at my plate, and we both pretended that second hadn't happened. Lunch continued. The banchan kept coming. Sehun stole the last piece of garlic off my side of the grill, and I stabbed his hand with my chopstick. Not hard, just present. And he laughed so loudly the table next to us turned to look. Sejin watched the whole thing with that almost smile that I was beginning to suspect was actually his version of losing control. It was easy. That was the part that unsettled me. Being with them was easy in the way that things felt easy right before they got complicated. I knew this. My gift had been telling me this since the moment I opened my front door. And yet I sat there eating grilled meat and laughing at Sehun's terrible impression of his university professor and letting Sewon refill my water glass without being asked. And I did absolutely nothing to protect myself. Which brought me to the twist, the one I saw coming and still wasn't ready for. We were walking back toward the waterfront after lunch, the 4 of us loose and warm from the meal, when Sehun's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and something shifted in his expression. Just briefly, like a light switching behind his eyes. "Give me a minute," he said, and stepped away toward the railing. Sejin watched him go. His jaw tightened slightly, the way someone's jaw tightens when they already know what a phone call is about and have opinions about it. I looked between them. My precognition didn't flash this time. I didn't need it to. "What's happening?" I asked Sejin directly, because I had no patience for the performance of everything being fine when everything was clearly not fine. Sejin looked at me. He made a decision. I could see him make it. That particular stillness before someone chooses honesty over comfort. "Jiwon called Sehun this morning," he said. The sea wind off Gwangali hit my face. "Before you came to get me," I said slowly. "Yes. And you still came." "Of course we still came." No hesitation, no decoration, just that. I turned to watch Sehun at the railing. His shoulders were tight. His free hand pressed flat against the metal rail like he needed something solid. His voice didn't carry, but his body language was a complete sentence. "What did Jiwon want?" I asked. Sejin was quiet for a beat. "To warn us away from you?" I laughed. It came out smaller than I intended. Warn you away. He said you were unstable, that your ability made you unreliable and difficult. Sejin's voice carried no judgment, just the words, clean and direct. He said any alpha who got close to you would regret it. The wind came again, colder this time. Here is the thing nobody understood about G1. He hadn't always been like that. 2 years ago, he had held my hands after a particularly brutal vision left me shaking at 3 in the morning. He had called my precognition beautiful once. Like he had said I was the most extraordinary person he had ever met. And then slowly, quietly, he had started using the word unstable. First as concern, then as fact, then as a door closing. 9 words this morning. I think we've grown apart. What he actually meant was, I stopped knowing how to hold something I couldn't control. My throat felt tight. I was not going to cry on Guangali Beach in front of Quan Sejin. That was a hard boundary. And you came anyway, I said again. Sejin stepped closer, not crowding, just present. Haon. His voice was low and even. A man who leaves you on your birthday and then calls to make sure no one else shows up is not someone who lost feelings. That is someone who is afraid of what you are. Something cracked open quietly behind my sternum. Seo came back from the railing. His smile was reconstructed, slightly imperfect at the edges. His eyes found mine immediately. Sorry about that, he said. Don't be, I said. I know who called. His smile dropped. Then he looked at Sejin with an expression that was sharp and brief and full of things brothers said to each other without words. And my precognition flickered again. Different this time. Not the fight. Something before it. Sehyeon's face close to mine, warm and searching, his voice low. I need you to know something, Haon. I blinked the vision away. You okay? Sehyeon asked. Present tense. Real time. Getting there, I said honestly. And for the first time today, I meant it. That should have been a comfort. Instead, it sat in my chest like something I didn't know how to carry yet. Too warm and too new and slightly terrifying in the way that good things always felt terrifying when you had spent too long expecting them to leave. We walked back along the waterfront. The afternoon had softened, the light off the water turning that particular shade of pale gold that made Busan look like somewhere someone had invented specifically to make artists feel inadequate. I had my hands in my pockets. Sehyeon had fallen into step beside me, close enough that our arms occasionally brushed. He wasn't forcing it, it just kept happening, the way gravity worked, quietly and without asking permission. Sejin had moved slightly ahead, phone to his ear, his voice low and businesslike. Sewon walked behind us at that same careful distance he always maintained, present without pressing, like a tide that knew exactly how far to come in. Nod, can I ask you something? Sehyeon said. You can ask, I said. I reserve the right to answer with a different question entirely. He smiled at that. How long have you had the visions? I looked at him sideways. Down. Down, he confirmed, completely unbothered. But I would have asked anyway. I noticed at lunch. You went somewhere for about 4 seconds and came back different. Different how? Careful, he said simply. Like you saw something that changed the math on a problem you were already solving. I pulled in a slow breath. The salt air filled my lungs and I let it sit there a moment before answering. Since I was 16, I said. They started small. Just feelings mostly, like knowing the phone was about to ring before it did. Then they got sharper, more specific. I paused. Yeah, more inconvenient. Do they hurt? Nobody ever asked that. Ji-won had asked what I saw. He had asked how accurate they were. He had asked, toward the end, whether I had seen anything about them, about their future together, with an edge in his voice that was less wonder and more demand. Sehyeon asked if they hurt. Sometimes, I said honestly, the big ones do, like a light going off directly behind your eyes. And then it's gone, and you're standing in the middle of whatever you were doing, trying to remember how to be a regular person. That sounds exhausting. It's a full-time job on top of my actual job, I said. I work at a bookshop. The bookshop is significantly less complicated. He laughed softly, then quieter. What did you see at lunch? I kept my eyes forward. The bridge over the water was catching the afternoon light, silver and clean. Two of your brothers, I said carefully, arguing. The silence that followed was specific, the kind that confirmed something rather than questioned it. About you, Sehun said, not a question. The vision didn't come with captions, I said, but context suggested. He was quiet for a moment. Then he stopped walking. I stopped too because when someone stops with that kind of intention, you stop with them. He turned to face me. The light hit his face at an angle that made him look less like someone easy and more like someone trying very hard to be honest about something that complicated him. I need you to know something, Han, he said. The vision from earlier landed in my memory like a stone dropping into still water. Those exact words, his face this close, this light. And I had seen this moment 20 minutes ago, and it still hit differently in real time. We didn't come today just to help you forget Jiwan, he said. That was real, we meant it. But it wasn't the whole truth. He held my gaze steady. Suwan has been talking about you for 6 months, since he ran into you at the architecture exhibition at Busan Cinema Center. He came home that night and described your entire conversation word for word. I have never in my life heard Suwan talk that much about anything. I thought about Suwan in my apartment doorway, reading my sunrise sketches with those quiet, careful eyes. And Sejin, Sehyun continued, started asking Daon's brother about you 3 months ago. Casual questions, how you were doing, whether you seemed happy, whether you were still with Jiwon. A beat. Nara, he wasn't asking casually. The waterfront moved around us. People passed. The sea kept going. And you, I asked. Something shifted in his expression, honest and slightly undone. I watched you argue down that event organizer 2 years ago, he said, and I thought, whoever ends up with him is either the luckiest person alive or completely unprepared for what's coming. A corner of his mouth moved. Possibly both. I stared at him. You're telling me all three of you? Yes. Separately, without coordinating. We figured it out about a month ago, he admitted. It was a very uncomfortable dinner. A sound escaped me that was halfway between a laugh and disbelief. I cannot decide if this is the most flattering thing that has ever happened to me or a significant personal safety concern. Probably both, Sewon said quietly from behind me. I turned. He was closer than I expected, hands in his coat pockets, expression composed but eyes entirely too direct. You were listening, I said. I was present, he corrected. I looked at all three of them. Sejin had finished his call and turned back, watching me with that measured, careful attention that saw too much and said too little. Three brothers, all late 20s, all looking at me like I was something they had each separately decided to orbit before realizing the others were already in the same sky. My precognition flickered, warm this time. No fight, just light. I pressed my lips together. I need to sit down, I said. If this story's already living in your chest and you need to know what Haon decides, hit that subscribe button right now. Because what happens next between these four is going to change everything, and you do not want to walk into it without context. Subscribe and stay close. There was a low stone bench along the waterfront railing, the kind that existed purely for people whose legs had stopped cooperating with their emotions. I found it and sat down and put my hands flat on my knees and stared at the Gwangangan Bridge like it personally owed me an explanation. Three brothers, separately, for months. Sewon since the architecture exhibition, Sejin asking quiet questions through Daon's brother, Sehyun watching me win an argument 2 years ago and filing it away like evidence. On all of them circling the same person without knowing the others were doing it, and not one of them had said anything until today. My birthday, the day Jiwon decided 9 words were sufficient closure for 2 years. The timing was either cosmic or catastrophic. Knowing my life, probably both. Seyun sat beside me on the bench. Not too close. Just enough. Sejin stood at the railing facing the water, his back to us, giving me space in the most deliberate and thoughtful way possible. Swan crouched down a few feet away, forearms resting on his knees, looking out at the bridge with that permanent listening expression. Say something, Seyun said gently. Even if it's just to tell us we're a lot. You're a lot, I said immediately. Fair. This is a lot. Also fair. I broke up with someone this morning, I said, via text. 9 words. And now I'm sitting on a bench in Guangale being told that three alpha brothers have been separately interested in me for months. I turned to look at Sehyun. Do you understand why I need a moment? Take as many moments as you need, he said. I looked at Sewan. He was already looking at me. He nodded once, that same small economy of movement he used instead of speeches. I looked at Sejan's back, straight, patient, giving me the railing and the sea and all the space they contained. Something in me loosened, just slightly, just enough. I'm not making any decisions today, I said clearly. I want that stated out loud so nobody gets any ideas. Understood, Sejan said without turning around. I'm also not running, I added, because that felt equally important to establish. I'm just sitting with this. Then we'll sit with you, Sehyun said simply. And they did. Nobody pushed. Nobody filled the silence with noise. We sat on that waterfront bench while Busan moved around us and the light kept shifting, and the bridge stayed silver over the gray-green water, and it was the most quietly companionable I had felt in months, which is precisely when everything broke open. Sejan's phone rang again. He looked at the screen. Something in his posture changed so completely and so fast that I felt it before I understood it. His shoulders didn't tighten. They went still, which was worse. He answered, listened for approximately 10 seconds. Then he turned around and looked at Sehyun with an expression I had never seen on his face before. Sehyun stood up. What? Ji-won is here, Sejan said quietly. The sentence landed on the waterfront like something dropped from a significant height. I was on my feet before I made the decision to stand. My precognition didn't flash. It didn't need to. I could feel the shape of the next few minutes like weather coming in off the water, heavy and electric and impossible to redirect. Here as in Busan, I said. Or here as in 50 meters, Sejan said. His eyes moved past my shoulder. I turned. Ji-won was walking toward us along the waterfront path, hands in the pockets of that gray jacket he wore everywhere, his face doing the thing it did when he was performing calm over something that wasn't calm at all. He was handsome in the way I had once found disarming and now found simply familiar, the way you found old furniture familiar, present, known, no longer surprising. The way his eyes found mine first, then moved to the brothers, then came back to me with something in them that sat between possessive and ashamed, which was a combination I recognized because I had watched it develop over 2 years without fully naming it. Haon, he said. Ji-won, I said. You texted me 9 words this morning. I counted. Something flickered across his face. I came to talk. You had 2 years to talk. He stopped in front of me, close enough that I could smell his scent, something I had once found comforting, something that now just smelled like the past trying to walk back into the present without an invitation. Who are these people? He said, looking at the brothers. Friends, I said. They don't look like friends. Ji-won. My voice was flat and clear. You broke up with me on my birthday, by text. Well, you do not get to show up on the same waterfront and have opinions about my company. His jaw tightened. I heard you'd be here. I came because I made a mistake. You made several, I said. Which specific one are we discussing? And that was when Sehyun stepped forward. Not aggressively, not with volume. He simply moved to stand beside me, close enough that his arm pressed warm against mine, and looked at Ji-won with an expression that was pleasant on the surface and absolute underneath. Sejan moved to my other side. Suwon stayed where he was, but the quality of his stillness changed entirely. Ji-won looked at the three of them, then at me. Something broke in his expression, cracking straight down the middle between anger and something rawer than that. Are you serious? And he said, all 3 of them. I told you, I said quietly. But you don't get to have opinions today. Han, I love you. The words hit the air and stayed there. Behind me, I felt something shift between the brothers. Subtle, charged. The beginning of exactly what my vision had shown me at lunch. The fight, coming in like the tide, right on schedule. Ji-won's words hung in the salt air between us. 3 syllables, 1 claim, 0 right to either. I looked at him for a long moment. At the face I had memorized over 2 years. At the jaw I had once found reassuring and now just found familiar the way an old scar was familiar. Present, unchanging, no longer painful, just there. You love me, I said. Yes, he said. You loved me this morning too, I said. When you sent 9 words and went back to sleep. His expression tightened. Haon, I panicked. I made a mistake. Well, I came to fix it. You came because Seo didn't answer your warning call, and you got nervous, I said. My voice was even and calm, and I was quietly proud of that. You came because you wanted to make sure nobody else showed up, not because you love me, because you wanted to make sure nobody else got to. Something moved through his face that confirmed it more completely than anything he could have said. Behind me, the air shifted. That charged, specific shift I had been feeling building since Sejin's phone rang. I felt Sehun move first, his arm leaving mine as he stepped forward, and I knew without looking that his easy smile was entirely gone. She already told you, Sehun said, and then caught himself. He already told you. You don't get opinions today. Jiwon's eyes cut to him. Stay out of this. I'm already in it, Sehun said simply. Sehun. Sejin's voice came from my right. Low. Warning. No, Sehun said. And that single word carried something I had not heard from him all day. An edge. Real and undecorated. He called me this morning to warn me away from Haon. He used the word unstable, about someone he claimed to love. The waterfront went very quiet around us. I felt that word land in my chest the way it always landed. Unstable. Jiwon's favorite reframe. What had started as concern and ended as a cage built from careful language and repeated use. I never said that to hurt him, Jiwon said tightly. Then why did you say it to me? Sehun said. To a stranger about the person you were supposedly still with this morning. Sejin stepped forward now too. Not loud, not aggressive, just immovable. Chen, you ended things this morning, Sejin said to Jiwon, his voice carrying the particular quiet of someone who did not need volume to be heard. That was your choice. What you don't get to do is stand here and treat him like something you can pick back up because the alternative arrived. Jiwon looked at Sejin the way people looked at walls they had just realized were load-bearing. Who are you to him, Jiwon said. Someone who showed up, Sejin said. And that was when it happened. The part my vision had shown me at lunch. Seyun turned to look at Sejin, and something in the look was not just about Jiwon anymore. Something older. Something that had been sitting under the surface of this entire day, like a current under still water. You've been asking about him for 3 months, Sehun said to Sejin. Quiet, direct. And through back channels, without saying anything to us, Sejin's jaw tightened. This isn't the moment. You made it the moment when you stepped forward like that. Sehun. I'm not angry, Sehun said, and his voice was honest enough that I believed him. I'm asking you directly. Were you planning to tell us? The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had heard all day. Jiwon had gone still, watching this unfold with the expression of someone who had arrived to reclaim something and discovered it had already become something he didn't recognize. I looked at Sejin. He was looking at Sehun, and the composure he wore so naturally had developed one visible crack, right along the place where control met something he hadn't intended to show. I didn't know how to say it, Sejin said finally. I didn't know if it was my place. It's always your place, Sewon said quietly from behind us all. Everyone turned. Sewon had stood up from his crouch and was looking at Sejin with an expression that was not accusatory and not gentle. Just clear. You do this, Sewon said to Sejin. You decide what you're allowed to want before anyone else gets a vote. You manage everything from a distance because it feels safer than being wrong. He paused. I do it too. We learned it from the same place. The thing about Sewon speaking at length was that when he did, every word mattered. You could feel the room reorganize around them. Sejin looked at his youngest brother for a long moment. Something moved through his expression, complicated and quiet, the kind of thing that only happened between people who had been carrying the same weight from the same origin without comparing notes. I know, Sejin said. Jiwon made a sound, short and frustrated. So what? You 3 are just going to compete over him right in front of him. I turned back to face Jiwon fully. Nobody is competing, I said, and I am not a prize at a competition. I'm a person having a very full birthday who would like you to leave now. Haon? Jiwon. I held his gaze steady. You called me unstable to someone else while we were still together. I let that sit for exactly the right amount of time. That's the thing I won't be forgetting. Not today, not after today. So when you say you love me, I need you to understand that love doesn't do that. And I deserve to know the difference. His mouth opened, closed. He left. I watched him walk back down the waterfront path until the crowd absorbed him. And then I turned around and looked at three brothers who were all looking at me with three completely different expressions that somehow added up to the same thing. Well, I said, that was a lot. Are you okay? Seo asked. I checked. Actually checked the way I had learned to do. Honest inventory instead of automatic reassurance. Yes, I said, and meant it. Are you three okay? They looked at each other. Something passed between them. The particular language of people who had just cracked something open between themselves and were still deciding what lived inside it. Getting there, Sagen said. I almost smiled. He almost smiled back. And somewhere in the space between those two almost smiles, something settled. Not loudly, not with ceremony, just the quiet click of something finding the place it was always supposed to occupy. We stood on the Guangali waterfront, the four of us, while Busan moved around us the way cities did, indifferent and beautiful and completely unbothered by the fact that something significant had just happened on one of its benches. The light had shifted deeper into afternoon gold. The bridge caught it differently now, warmer, less silver, more amber, like the day itself had decided to change register. Can we walk? I asked. I think better when I walk. Nobody argued. We fell into step together, looser than before. The particular looseness of people who had just said difficult, true things and survived them. Seo came up on my left, Sagen on my right, Sewon slightly behind, but closer than his usual careful distance. Yan, I noticed that. I think he knew I noticed. I let the salt air do its work. In through the nose, out through the mouth, Busan filling my lungs like a reminder that I was here and intact and 23 years old on a birthday that had started as a disaster and turned into something I didn't have a category for yet. I need to say something, I said to the bridge, to the water, to all three of them at once. And I need nobody to interrupt me until I'm finished, because I will lose my nerve and start making jokes instead. Understood, Sewon said from behind me. I pulled in one more breath. I saw things today, I said. Not just the vision at lunch. All of it. The way Sagen gives space without being asked. The way Seo asks if things hurt instead of asking what they are. So, the way Sewon remembers a conversation from 2 years ago about bridge light and files it away like it mattered. I pause. It all mattered. It was all the kind of thing I stopped expecting people to do because G1 taught me slowly and quietly that I was too much to pay that kind of attention to. The waterfront path curved gently ahead of us. My precognition showed me the three of you fighting over me, I continued, at lunch. I saw it, and I spent the rest of the afternoon waiting for it and dreading it, because every time something good showed up in my life, a vision followed it like a warning, like the gift was saying, enjoy this, but know what it costs. I stopped walking. They stopped with me. I turned to face all three of them properly in the amber afternoon light, with the sea at my back and Busan humming around us. And I looked at each of them in turn. Sehun, warm and honest and slightly undone. Sagen, composed and cracked open in exactly the right place. Sewon, steady and present, and closer than he had been all day. But the fight wasn't about wanting to win me, I said. It was about Sagen not knowing how to say what he wanted, and Sehun caring enough to call it out, and Sewon saying the true thing quietly when everyone else was too loud to hear it. I shook my head slowly. My vision showed me the shape of it. It didn't show me what it meant. It never does. That's the part I always have to figure out myself. Nobody spoke. The water moved. The light held. I'm not making a decision about the future today, I said. I meant that earlier and I still mean it. But I'm also not closing a door because I'm scared. How I've been doing that for 2 years, and I'm tired of the inside of closed rooms. Sehun let out a breath, slow and careful, like he had been holding it since the waterfront bench. Sagen looked at me with those deep, steady eyes and said, That's enough, Haon. That's more than enough. Sewon stepped forward. Just one step. But from Sewon, one step was a declaration. We're not going anywhere, he said quietly. Not today. Not after today. You set the pace. We'll be here. Something moved through my chest, warm and enormous and completely unmanageable. I had spent 23 years seeing fragments of futures I couldn't control. I had spent 2 years shrinking myself into a shape that fit inside someone else's comfort zone. I had spent this morning staring at 9 words on a phone screen, trying to convince myself they were enough of an explanation. And now I was standing on a waterfront in Busan in the amber late afternoon light with 3 alpha brothers who had each, separately and quietly and without coordination, decided I was worth showing up for. My precognition flickered one last time. Not a warning, not a fight, not a fragment of something coming to hurt me. Just warmth, low light, a table with food on it, laughter I recognized. 4 people taking up exactly the right amount of space, and me in the middle of it, not hiding anything. I blinked the vision back and looked at the 3 of them. Okay, I said. Seo tilted his head. Okay, what? Okay, I said again, and let myself smile. Real and unguarded and slightly terrifying in the way that honest things always were. Let's go eat my chestnut cake. It's been in the car for 2 hours, and if nobody eats it soon, I'm going to make very poor emotional decisions about it alone. Sehun laughed, full and bright and unguarded. Sejun's almost smile became a real one. Complete, unhidden, worth every almost that came before it. Suwon looked at me with those dark, steady eyes and said very quietly, "Happy birthday, Haon." And it was. For the first time all day, without qualification, without asterisk, without the shadow of 9 words or old wounds or futures I couldn't fully see. It was a good birthday. The best one, actually. And something in my chest, that quiet precognitive place that always knew before I did, settled into a certainty I hadn't felt in years. This was only the beginning, and that is a wrap on this story, and what a story it was. If Hayon and the Quan brothers took up space in your chest today, if you laughed, if you felt something shift, then you are exactly the kind of person this channel was made for. Hit that subscribe button right now because there are more stories coming, more characters who will wreck you in the best possible way, more worlds built exactly for people who feel things deeply and love stories that honor that. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. Now subscribe, share this with someone who needs a good story today, and we will see you in the next one.